Good evening, my name is Caitlin Chadwick. I'm from the Haldane PTA board, and I want to thank you and welcome you all to this evening's Meet the Candidate event. We are going to be hearing from our 5 applicants for the 2 available seats for Board of Ed trustees: Keith Anderson, John Headland, Sandy McKelvey, Laura O'Connell, and Margaret Parr. We are going to join the meeting now in progress and hear Keith Anderson's opening statement.
I just think I should lead off with my greatest accomplishment, and that was that somehow I got my wife to marry me. I don't know how that happened, but she just did it, and that, of course, caused the next thing that kind of gets me into the reason why I'm running. And that is, we had 2 children, and they both attended Haldane, and then finally attended college. My daughter is 24, my son's 20. My daughter's a paralegal in Pennsylvania, and she's got my grandson, which I sometimes claim to my own. And he's 4 years old, so we also have an interest in his going to school. My son, no, he's pretty special. He's a senior at Georgia Tech, and he's really smart. Out of 6 semesters attended, he might have pulled his 4.0, and we're proud. Anyway, sorry about that. But I'm a retired NYPD sergeant with 20 years of service, and I work for J.P. Morgan Chase as a commercial real estate appraiser. I'm currently a project manager doing software development on the business side of that. We're trying to build an appraisal writing piece. In my experience, I've seen people at their best, and I've seen people at their worst, and I can tell you that it's much better to see them at their best, okay? And we raised 2 kids to love learning so that they could achieve the purpose in their life, and that is to achieve happiness. Since Haldane was an instrumental part of my kids' education, I also feel that future generations deserve to have that same opportunity, to love learning like my kids did. And that's why I'm running for trustee. I do have a thought, though, and one of the things was they wanted me to kind of work towards my education philosophy and see how that aligned with the Haldane vision. And my education philosophy, it kind of differs from the vision. 30 seconds, all right. It differs from the vision on the Haldane website. It's pretty good there, but I take exception to the first thing. And the first statement is that the district believes that the students will learn and become responsible citizens. That's a quote, okay? And anybody who's ever taught anything and been in a classroom for more than 5 minutes knows that nobody's going to learn if they do not want to learn, okay? And if you spend more than 5 minutes in a classroom, you'll know that the first part of that statement just is not true. It just can't happen. A person has to want to learn. They have to have that. And that's the challenge for every teacher, to find a way to get them to love learning. And the problem is that if you have little success to get them to learn, it's very hard for them to become responsible citizens. So that's it. Okay, thank you.
Good. Thank you very much. I'm John Headland. First, I'd like to thank the PTA for hosting this, Dr. Bowers and the other members of the Board of Education I see here. And finally, thanks to all of you for coming out and being engaged and learning about us, what we bring to the table, and spending the time away from your families or your obligations. And for me, it's really that sense of time that is why I'm running. We moved here about 11 years ago, and it was a great place to raise kids, small community, place where we could get involved. And very quickly, you come to realize how much of what makes Cold Spring really important is done by all the volunteers and the hours that go into making this a really special place. So you think about the people who coach every single sport under the sun. You think about the 4th of July. You think about the volunteer fire department, the fact that we have a volunteer fire department. You think about the parades. You think about the tree planting. All of that is what makes Cold Spring. And I think it's really an achievement that people contribute that much. I think it's also a responsibility for people as part of the community to find something you can do and then do it. And so for me, I think this is something I can do. I'd be happy to do it. I also think I bring a couple things to the table. I've been in marketing and communication for about 18 years now, and I think that right now that's a really important thing for Haldane, especially with the new superintendent coming on board. I've also worked a lot with organizations and trying to help them solve problems, which is figure out what the problem is, figure out what are key data points around the problem and how we're going to come to a solution, and then coming to a solution. And then the real challenge is not that, I don't think. I think it's trying to keep people engaged along the way so they know what's happening, so they know what you're talking about. And so when you get to an answer, even if it isn't an answer that they may agree with, they at least understand how you got there. So I've got a little bit of experience. The second question was, tell us about your education philosophy. And how it maps with Haldane. And I think actually Laura Ashton answered it really well in one of the responses to one of the newspapers, which is, I think to be a Board of Education member, my education philosophy is really not the most important thing. I think the most important thing is deliver on the mandate of the board, which is hire a really good superintendent, make sure you're being clear about the budgeting process and help the district through the budgeting and balancing the needs of the community, and finally managing the policies and administering the policies of the district, among other things. So you hire somebody really good, thank you. And you help them do their job. But I don't want to duck the question entirely, because I did teach elementary school for a couple of years out of undergrad. And I think it's really important for me, and certainly for what I've seen, is you need to reach students wherever they are. So whether that's the type of learning that they do, whether that's the type of extracurricular and engagement that brings them to school. One of our superintendent candidates talked about athletics being the key reason that he engaged with his educational experience. That's really important to me, and it's really important that you prepare them for a diverse set of opportunities after they graduate. Thank you.
Well, thank you all for coming out tonight. It really shows how committed you are to this school. My name is Sandy McKelvey, and I'm a parent of a 5th grader and an 8th grader. I've worked with the district for close to 9 years, mostly as a volunteer, but also as a paid consultant. I think I know about every teacher in the elementary and middle schools, most of the staff, and literally hundreds of the kids. I've seen them grow up and graduate. And after 9 years, I am still blown away by the curiosity, the knowledge, the passion, and the thirst for learning these kids have. Over the years, I've created programs and curriculum in food, health, and wellness, and garden education at Haldane that have touched every student in grades K through 8. As a member of the Wellness Committee, I created a Farm to School initiative at Haldane, which includes the hands-on cooking program, Chef in the Classroom, and the garden education program, Farmer in the Classroom. Since these programs began, I've been getting feedback from parents gushing about how their picky eaters now love beets and spinach and want to start cooking at home. I have a teaching background, certified in teaching English for speakers of other languages. I've written and executed dozens of hands-on lessons at Haldane covering standards in math, ELA, science, and social studies. My work here led me to create programs for other New York school districts, as well as produce curriculum and training manuals for New York state and county government agencies. I was part of the discovery process for Haldane's strategic plan of 2014-15, working with talented parents and educators on the Teaching and Learning Subcommittee. I am a small business owner with 20-plus years of experience in sales and marketing. And I'm also currently working with high schoolers to create a teen center as a safe but cool place for teens to hang out after school, a project the town voted a top priority through the Phillipstown Community Congress. I'm running for school board because I think we can do better as a school district. We can do better by listening more to the community and encouraging them to participate, by communicating better, by being more transparent about what goes on in the decision-making process. I believe that every student brings with them a unique voice and a desire to learn, and these differences should be embraced and nurtured, and I think it's our job of the leadership of the school, the board and the superintendent, to pay attention to the changing needs of the students, making sure that all kids are given the tools they need to thrive and succeed academically, socially, and emotionally. This is a critical time for the district. We have a new elementary and middle school principals, and next year we will be welcoming our new superintendent. We need a school board that feels the pulse of the community, one that takes feedback, both positive and negative, and will cooperatively work with the community towards positive change.
Hi, my name's Laura O'Connell, and thank you to the PTA and the school board and Dr. Bowers. You guys have done a great job and have been extremely committed for the past couple of years. So just a little bit about me. My family and I have been a resident of Cold Spring for over 10 years. Our son is 2.5, and he is a resident at the Nest. And you know, people have asked me why I'm running because I actually don't have a child at Haldane. Well, my son will be there in a couple of years, and it's about the right time to get involved. So I actually come from a little bit of an interesting background. I'm currently the Director of Capital Projects and Construction for the Public Theater in New York City. Prior to that, I was actually the Director of Capital Projects for Higher Education, mostly at Columbia University and Teachers College. You know, what I bring to the board and what I can possibly bring as also a resident is my knowledge of the understanding large-scale strategic planning or academic long-term planning and the parallel nature of spending money and addressing the issues of facilities. You know, it's careful planning, it's careful understanding and assessments of what's actually really going on and being able to allocate the correct financial background and information and actually making sure that the correct money is spent that's in line with the academic planning so that both of them can actually work parallel and support one another. With that being said, my education philosophy is a little bit of an interesting one. I'm actually from the Arlington School District. I'm actually a Hudson Valley resident for pretty much all my life. And you know, Haldane's actually a very interesting place. I grew up knowing about Haldane when I was at Arlington. But Arlington is big, for those of you who know it. You know, they have a lot of money, they have a lot of support. They're a huge school. I actually was part of it. We had 2 campuses. We had 2 separate middle schools. You know, what's important is an understanding of that is that I'm a huge advocate of the public school system. And what's amazing about Haldane is that because of the tight-knit community and because of the student to teacher ratio, you actually get a very interesting private education kind of component to in a public school system. 30 seconds. Okay. So what I wanted to kind of say is that, you know, I'm actually coming in from a very different perspective. I'm not new to Cold Spring, I'm not new to Haldane, but I am new to the school district. You know, as kind of I said in my interview, or in my, my article, is I feel like the job of the school board is truly just really making the right decisions for the district. And, you know, my political position's of no consequence.
Hi, thank you for coming tonight. The problem with being last is that everyone's already said everything that, all the thank yous, but thank you for hosting us, thank you for coming, thank you for allowing us to have this presentation. I am Margaret Parr. I am the sole incumbent that is running again for office. As many of you probably know, I thought long and hard about running again. When I ran last time, my intention was to run for 1 term. I'm sure you've heard me say 1 year in honor of my daughter, 1 year in honor of my son, and 1 year to say goodbye. That was always my intention from the beginning. And then we unexpectedly found ourselves in the midst of a superintendent search. It was during those last few weeks that I realized what the gravity was to hiring the superintendent for our school district, the CEO of the largest organization in Cold Spring. It really started to sink in, and my main reason for deciding to run again was I really felt like there's a lot of challenges that can come to a new superintendent who doesn't have the same people behind him from the beginning that were in the interviews with him. So if I am reelected, he will have 80% of the people that actually sat in the room and hired him and made that decision to have him. I think that continuity is crucial. I think onboarding him will be an important part in setting him up for a foundation of success for long-term commitment to our school district. The next part of this question was educational philosophy. There does seem to be some confusion about the role of the school board. And I'm just going to read this. The school board has very clear charges directed by the state of New York for the things we need to accomplish. The school board establishes policy, develops an annual budget for public approval, votes on the superintendent's recommendations on personnel matters and contracts, reviews curriculum as presented by the school leaders, and acts as a communication link between residents and the superintendent, and hires a new superintendent when necessary. That all being said, my personal philosophy really isn't directly relevant to this race as far as I can see it. Yes, I could say the children are our greatest assets, that each child is unique, and as a school district we need to do our best, that we need to provide them a stimulating environment. But mostly, I think Haldane hires very capable professional teachers and administrators, and we have chosen them wisely. We need to step back as a board and let them be the professionals that they are and take over the reins and lead the school district.
Thank you.
Thank you all for your opening statements. Ahead of time, we decided on the order today. So John Headland, you're going to lead us off in our first question in reference to fiscal responsibility.
Fantastic.
Fabulous. I'm excited. So the question is, given the many challenges that face a small school like Haldane with limited education funds, how would you prioritize its needs?
Thank you very much. I appreciate the question. I think it's one of the key questions for Haldane, and frankly, key question for any school district in New York State these days. And for me, the key part of that was the how. I think the prioritization and processing fiscal responsibility and understanding how we're going to do it really requires a good plan. And that's one of the reasons that for me, this all starts, and one of the key components is a strategic plan of the district. And that's for two reasons. First reason is you have a plan. You know what you want to achieve, you know where we're trying to go in 5 years, and you know what we're going to try to do to get there. But the second part is that that's a fantastic opportunity and a great opportunity for the community to be involved to help determine what Haldane should be doing, how we should be educating our students, what we need to be preparing them for, and frankly, how we're going to prioritize all the needs and all the desires within a plan. We have a great plan. It's got a lot of stuff in it. And so a prioritization of what we want to do. I think the second process is you need to link that plan to some sort of financial implications. Because I think we've all been like, you're saving up for vacation, you're saving up to put an addition on your house, you're saving up to do whatever. If you have a plan and you don't know what it's going to cost, you're probably not going to achieve it. So for me, you got a plan, you got to understand the fiscal implications of that plan, and then third, you got to sort of measure and see how you're doing. Every year, we should be better. We should be getting farther along in what we're trying to do. And we should say, we're doing great here, we're not doing so great over here, we need to invest. So at the beginning of every year, I think you should take that and use that as a blueprint for your annual budget process. Of course, the problem is every year you have something that comes over the transom that you don't expect. But then at least when you're heading for prioritization, you know what you're trying to aim for. You can allocate funds or cut back funds as you need based on what the community has decided we need to do, and you can accommodate the annual things that come over the transom you need to deal with. Thank you.
Well, we are a small district, as we all know, and we can dream big, but ultimately we need to balance the budget, so we have to set our priorities. The school budget should reflect the number one priority of the school, education. During recent budget talks, the community heard about possible programs and teaching positions that might be eliminated in order to balance the budget. Successful programs and instructional positions should never be considered for elimination if our priorities are set right. The first considerations should be non-instructional line items and unnecessary excesses. Should we be spending thousands of dollars sending teachers and administrators across the country for professional development when we could be saving money tapping into the wealth of practical knowledge we have in our own community and New York City is in our backyard? There are many local professional development workshops that are either low cost or no cost. We have Teaching the Hudson Valley, the Carey Institute, the Science Barge, Stone Barns. We used to have the Haldane Hudson Environmental Learning Program, known as HELP. We also have great resources right in Phillipstown. The 5th grade Arts Alive program, for example, enlists many local professionals who donate their time to teach songwriting, filmmaking, ceramics, creative writing, acting, and more. We should do more of this. Our teachers are our most valuable resource, and they should be our top priority. We should be asking them what they need to succeed. We should give them meaningful instructional support, sufficient tools, and adequate materials. Thank you.
Thank you, Sandy.
So, I've been actually talking with a lot of individuals about and actually Margaret did something that actually was an eye-opener for myself as well, kind of what our board and what a board member's responsibilities are with regard to the duties and the policies and the procedures that we follow. I think the difficult challenge about the board is actually not for us to prioritize, but actually to be able to listen to all of the administrators. So it's important to engage kind of the recommendation that's coming down from the administrators and from the educators. And also, the superintendent plays a very large role as well. So ultimately, our job is to kind of understand what their recommendations are and to actually, vote as a board with regard to whatever those priorities are. And the understanding is that the recommendations are good for the school and they're what's being recommended for the district. With that being said, we understand that there will always be fiscal challenges. The cost of living is going to consistently keep increasing. The needs with regard to facilities, I keep saying, are going to be increased as well. So there are going to be challenges up front. It's just a matter of understanding and trying to balance that with the best that we can. But with that being said, the board's responsibility is not necessarily to make the list of priorities, but to understand who ultimately is making that recommendation and then to vote accordingly.
I'm just going to throw some numbers out here. The average cost per student in a public school nationally is $9,666. The general education expenditure, the average cost per student in a public school in New York State is $21,000. For the expenditures per pupil at Haldane, it's $12,847. And for a similar size school, it's $14,657. What we can take from those numbers is, number one, this is a very affluent school district. We are not poor. We can't keep looking at this and saying, oh, we have no money, we have no money. We have a whole lot more money than a lot of districts across the country. Is it hard to make decisions for what we have? Yes, because we are so affluent, we have very, very high expectations. Because of those expectations, we want the best for our children. We want more, we want more, we want more, which is why now we've got this number that's not quite matching. So that's the struggle that we deal with when we're talking about funding and cuts in the budget, because we have very high expectations. But we have to remember, we are very affluent. There is money here that school districts don't have in other parts of the country. We have to be very grateful for what we do have. The average household income across the country is $50,000 a year. Put that in perspective for the people in this room, right? We're a very affluent community. So, given the high expectations, that's where the numbers come from. I'm going to speed this up because she just told me I have 30 seconds. For our priorities then, I think we need to keep academic programming strong. I think we need to keep in mind that we're educating the whole child, that their social and emotional wellness is really, really important. We need to provide a safe and functional space for our children to learn. We need teachers and administrators that are well-trained and compensated for their expertise. And for Haldane in particular, we need to foster that sense of community that makes this school so special.
Yeah, I think there's some significant challenges here in Haldane. Most of our revenue comes from residential sources, and that means that, most of the times, those residential sources have children, and they actually also send kids to the district, and that costs money too. So really, any type of additional building or additional taxes that come from growth in the area are really going to kind of be very limited. So we really have to start thinking about that, especially if we want to prioritize our education, which is as Sandy, I think, said, was the top priority here. However, it cannot be at the expense of destabilizing the community. The community has to be able to live here so that when people like me can have my grandkid and my daughter maybe move in one day, okay, and live down the block. I know 2 or 3 people in the audience that want to have their grandkids and their kids living within a mile or 2 of them. So that's always a problem. And I'm looking at this thing, and she just told us that it was 13 or 14,000 a student. I forget which one it was for Haldane, but I pay that about half of that every year, maybe a little bit more. And trust me, my house is nothing special, okay? And that means that even though my kids aren't coming here anymore, I'm still paying for about a half a student a year, every single year, okay? And we have to consider that, because I think ultimately, one of the things, I forget who said it before, but they said that there was strength in our community because it's so tight-knit. And it is, okay? It's a very, very good community, and I think it really benefits from extended families being here. Nonetheless, one of the things that I think is we got to really start thinking about really how to keep our extended families together. And I think that we need to have a duty towards those taxpayers and other people, in addition to 30 seconds. No, oh, I'm up. Okay, that's it. I keep going too far.
Thank you very much. So our next question has to do with governance and district operations. Are you ready, Sandy McKelvey? In your view, what has the district done well in the past few years, and what would you like to improve?
Well, I have a different spin on this. When my daughter started kindergarten 9 years ago, Haldane had what some might call a lockdown policy when it came to inviting parents and the community members into the school. Outsiders were not welcomed. That changed in 2011 when we got new leadership in the elementary and middle schools. The new principals recognized the value of involving the community. Since then, parents and community members have been welcomed to share their expertise in the classroom, in the arts, in the after-school enrichment programs, even during lunch. Once a month during elementary and middle school lunch, there is a program called Classical Cafe, where students are encouraged to perform music for their peers. This program was initiated by a parent who is an instrumentalist from a Broadway show. Just last week, the 8th grade biology students experienced a hands-on propagation and grafting workshop given by a master gardener, who also happens to be a parent, and a professional horticulturalist from Wave Hill who volunteered his time. Taking lessons learned in the classroom and applying them to the real world. Priceless. And these opportunities come at no or low cost to the district and the taxpayers. We should do more of this. These great programs have been celebrated by those involved, but unfortunately they have not received the encouragement and recognition from district leadership that they deserve. The Board of Education should cultivate these important opportunities that benefit all students as well as the wider community.
So, interestingly enough, 2 years ago, when I actually met the Board of Education for Haldane, interestingly enough, it was kind of right when the strategic plan was being launched. And I was actually just getting involved with Haldane at that time and being kind of, resourceful, looking into it, understanding that my son was just born and this was his future. What's quite amazing is, if you go to the website, all the information is there. It's very informational. There's a lot of information to kind of go through, and it's in depth and it's specific. I do understand that as we are moving towards the era of technology and everyone uses it, social media platforms kind of take over. I do believe that transparency is important. I say that with a grain of salt. Sometimes too much transparency and too much information could be a detriment. With that being said, I think that there's a way to get parents involved and actually kind of see the progression of the strategic plan. I do understand that there has been a lot of growth, there's been a lot of evolution in the teaching component in the lower grades, and there's been a lot of success. With that being said, I think that success should be celebrated, and it can be done, and that will also be able to engage the local community. So I don't know, whether or not it's a possibility to actually utilize the social media platform, but then be able to kind of create it and do it in such a manner that it's a safe platform, so that we don't get to the point where it becomes a crazy avenue for comments and questions. But with that being said, there needs to be kind of a methodology in the way of being able to be a little bit more in tune with the local community.
Thank you.
When I get like halfway, can you let me know just so I can? Because I feel like it's quiet. Yes. Only because I want to be sure to kind of split this in half. I actually conferred with the current board what they asked, what they would like to see highlighted as the achievements of what has gone on through the last few years. And I think there's a document that Diana Bowers put together of all the things that she has done during her tenure here. I'm just going to highlight a few of them. The last few years, we have deeply investigated and been discussing the buildings and grounds issues. With what we have done and the inspections that have gone on, I think we are in a good place now to decide what needs to be done to make sure that our children are in a good, safe environment during the school day. It's been a dynamic conversation with community members, experts, and we've ultimately got tangible facts now so that we can, move forward for the facilities. Another thing that's happened is we have cultivated a strong and diverse administrative team. It's our administrative team that really sets the bar and sets the tone for all of the teachers and for the students. And that's really a critical thing that has to happen. And most importantly, our school district has been listed as by New York State's Comptroller's Office as having 0% fiscal stress. That's virtually unheard of. Ann Dinio is a gem to this district. She can find money in places where none of us ever thought we'd be able to find them. She can move things around. She is an amazing steward of your tax dollars. What can we improve? This is where I wanted to make sure I didn't miss him. Communication is always in first and forefront at what people are looking for this district. It's a tough nut to crack. People get their information from so many different sources these days, particularly social media, which is very difficult because it becomes like a game of telephone. Somebody says one thing and it twists and it twists and it twists until it becomes something that's completely different than what's going on. Okay.
Kind of stinks, right? But the board's done well. I think the board's, I have to say kudos, because over the last, I think it's at least 4 years, we've never really gone over that 2% cap. And I think, Joe, you said so in your letter, that's been, a big deal, and you've done some cutting, and you've had to do things that you don't ordinarily want to do, but you've done a good job trying to really, maintain that 2% budget. What the board, I think, can do better is, and I'm not sure how much responsibility they have for the strategic plan, but this is really hard to read, okay? It's not that easy. I don't know what planned transition meetings conducted at appropriate benchmarks are. And I'm certainly not sure what vertical articulation opportunities at faculty meetings or superintendent's conference days are. These things are kind of like jargon. When I was a cop, I would get on the stand, and if I said in front of a jury, yeah, we took the RMP out to, 45th Street, and we went to a 1036, you guys wouldn't understand, and the jury would get annoyed, okay? Well, guess what? You can't have a partnership with the people if you write stuff like this, okay? To me, the whole idea is that as a trustee, 30 seconds, as a trustee, I'm supposed to be a representative of the district. I'm supposed to represent all of you guys. And that's a partnership. And you need that partnership. You need the partnership with the administration and the trustees, and you need the partnership with the community. If the community cannot see, the transparency is not there, then how, in God's name, can you expect anybody to know what you're doing? That's it. I got that one.
Thank you. It was very well done. Well done.
Okay, so in my view, what has the district done well in the past few years? So I was fortunate to be on the advisory committee that helped with the superintendent search, which is always fun because if you've ever interviewed anybody for a job, invariably people who come and interview, they say really nice things about your company or your school district. So it's kind of nice to bask in that. So a lot of the superintendent candidates said things that we would all know, like great opportunities for athletic involvement, great performing arts, blue ribbon school, all the things that when I talk to people, I talk and try to define Haldane, I talk about. But there was one thing that really struck me, and a couple of the prospective candidates said, specifically, in the past year to 18 months, they have sent staff and administrators here to learn how Haldane does DCI and project-based learning. So this is not, I know I'm going to interview, I'm going to send people. This is because we're known in this region for doing that type of curriculum and that type of engagement. And so I sort of felt kind of silly that I didn't know and understand that a little bit better. But the important thing to me was that, and speaking of what the district has done well, the district made a decision a couple of years ago that we needed to make a curriculum change. They've made that change. They've brought in PBL. They've brought in Discover, Create, Innovate as a way to get our children learning in ways that are going to benefit them post-graduation. And they stuck to it. If anybody's been part of an organization that changes every year, you can't have consistency. The teachers don't know what they're doing. The kids change the content every year. Certainly going into the new curriculum, a lot of kids were like, I didn't do this last year. So the fact that we made a decision and stuck to it has been remarkably consistent. I think the challenge is, I felt silly that I didn't know more about it. So being able to celebrate our successes, and so we all understand what are we doing, what's the plan, and how are we delivering on it, I think that's a big opportunity.
Thank you.
Right on the button. Very impressive.
Just gotta watch out.
We're going to discuss student achievement now with Laura O'Connor, who's going to kick us off. Question is, do you feel that Haldane students are adequately prepared for the challenges of tomorrow? If not, how would you seek to change that?
So I don't know if any child is going to be ready for the challenges of tomorrow. I'm not even ready for the challenges of tomorrow, honestly. Things are changing constantly, due to the course of the social environment and political environment that we live in. Anything is possible at this point. I think the main focus is, as a board member, is kind of what I've been saying all along, is to really, truly trust in the educators and the administrators that they are actually prioritizing and making the right recommendations for the good of the children. And that the more we educate the children and the more that we maintain and focus that education, they will be ready for at least whatever comes their path. With that being said, the only other kind of caveat, which I think is kind of interesting, Arlington, as much as the school is large, I do believe believe Haldane has the same kind of characteristic, which is, I'm actually still friends with my English teacher from high school, which is really odd, I know, I'm sure. But that relationship is 30 some odd years old. I'm sure, and I know for a fact that there are students here who are since married and actually still retain a relationship with their teachers. That's important. They move on into their adult life, they move on into their professional career, and they know they can always come back with any question, issue that actually helps them through their professional life. And I think that that's what's important.
Thank you.
So I'm going to use this question to actually brag about my own children for a minute. I have for those of you who don't know, I have 2 children that went to Haldane K-12. My son John was in the class of 2016. My daughter Catherine was in the class of 2017. They were both accepted to highly competitive colleges, the colleges of their choice, with significant merit scholarships and significant scholarships from outside sources. Without the academic rigor that Haldane provided, I don't believe that they would have gotten into those kind of schools. They are both currently holding GPAs above 3.6 at those schools. So it had to come from somewhere. My son, as a sophomore, he is set to start a summer internship with the FBI. And my daughter was just selected to represent one of the organizations that she belongs to at her school to assist in a trip to Uganda to work in the bush with people and families that have been affected and infected with the HIV virus. Those experiences that these children had at Haldane, in the Haldane community, prepared them to take on these challenges. It was here that my children learned how to ask for help when they needed it during 10th period without any stigma of needing extra assistance. It was here that my children were encouraged to try a new sport at the modified level to see if they liked it and wanted to spend some time learning more and doing it better. And if they didn't, that was okay. If they did, their coaches took them on and it let them see how far their bodies could go. It was here that they experienced Differences Day with the PTA. It was here that they sat through presentations to the Putnam County Sheriff's Department about drinking and driving and the coalitions like CARE's presentation on drug use and addiction. And it's here that they made their first friends and watched the adults around them who became their role models.
I think the Haldane students are generally well prepared for the challenges tomorrow. And as Ms. Parr said down there, yeah, they do. This is a high-performing school. And in that means there's going to be high-performing students. But one of the things that I find is that, my son was one of those kids, and he goes to Georgia Tech, and there's this great, great student week that they have there. And during that student week, they pull all the kids out of the room, and there's 150, maybe 200 parents in there, and they say to us, we pulled them out of the room for a reason. And the reason is that not one of them is ready for college. Not one of them. And I that was an eye-awakening thing. I said, what do you mean? And they said, well, they've been getting A's all their life. And a lot of them, they don't even try. They don't have to. They came here and, they just kind of cruise through things. And what happens is, the first semester's rude eye-awakening. There's a scope of work that they've never seen in their lives before. It's just maddening. And we got those phone calls. We get the phone calls from my son, telling us about grades that weren't all that great. No more A's anymore. But they said it. And that makes me think that we have really kind of a duty and responsibility to those kids. Maybe to just kind of shrink the stress level over there a little bit when you get to that first year. I'm not quite sure how to do this because it presents another challenge too. And that is that, we can't really hurt their grade point average, if they're competing with every other school in New York State, okay, and we're going to hold them to a higher standard here than we do anywhere else. So I can kind of get that, but I think we still have some sort of duty to show them. I mean, AP courses are one thing. They give you a full college course in over a year. But you know what? There's a lot of weekends in a year. There's a lot of weekends in a school year, and a lot of time off where you can get into that book and do what you need to do. You don't have the same thing in 15 weeks of college. That's it.
Great. So, question: are Haldane students adequately prepared for the challenges tomorrow? I have no idea. And I have no idea for sort of two reasons. One is I have no idea what's going to happen tomorrow. And if I did, I'd probably be in a very different job than I am now. But I think there are a couple things that are happening that inform what we need to be able to do at a school to make sure students are prepared. One is I think we all recognize technology is going to continue to be a larger and larger part of our life and our work, and that's a foregone conclusion. Second, so you need to be adequately prepared to deal with technology. Second, I think the rate of change, how fast things change in our lives and in our work, is going to continue to accelerate. So you need somebody who is prepared to continue to learn, because no longer are you going to be able to get out of high school and get into a job or a profession or get into college and be able to sort of sit with the base of knowledge that you've accumulated. You're going to continually need to refresh what you do. And third, I think longer term, people who are going to be successful, and you can define success in a number of different ways, but I think people who are going to be successful are people who have good people skills, who know how to interact with people around them, to engage diverse viewpoints, and to work with them. Because frankly, I think a lot of that doesn't require that, is unfortunately going to be automated. Right? So I think Haldane has a responsibility to think about those things and think about preparing our students for those. I think some of the things that they're doing, learner profiles, is great. I would have loved to have learned, probably in high school, how I learned best, because it wasn't until years later when I figured out that I need to write everything down in order for it to stick. So if you learn that earlier, you're going to be a better lifelong learner. And the second reason that I'm not quite sure whether our students are prepared is, frankly, I don't know how they do. To his point, I don't know how they're doing now. If a student spends 13 years at Haldane, 1 or 2 years out, we have a large responsibility for how they're doing right now. So whether I get on the board or not, I'm committed to working with the superintendent and Ms. Stiffen, understand how our graduates are doing, and use that to try to inform what we're doing to prepare them. Thank you.
I am very much in favor of the project-based authentic learning experiences and the hands-on student-driven projects that have been infused into all the grade levels at Haldane. I think they are definitely helping to prepare students for the challenges of tomorrow. This kind of learning promotes critical thinking skills, problem-solving skills, skills that will be needed for virtually every career field, as well as for successful independence as a young adult. But when I ask parents what they think we can improve at Haldane, nearly all of them replied that children are not learning how to write. I heard from a parent of a former Haldane student who is studying at a highly competitive college. Her son felt like he needed to catch up to his classmates because he didn't have the writing skills that were required. I spoke to a parent of a third grader who expressed frustration because she felt that so little of the school day was dedicated to writing. I've personally noted that my own kids have struggled with writing throughout elementary and middle school. What good is it to be able to make a Google slideshow or program a robot if the kids can't adequately express themselves in clear, well-thought-out writing? How will they fare in the real world when they have a fantastic idea, but they can't give the pitch in a clear and concise paragraph or two? What will prepare students for the future is to learn how to be critical thinkers and problem solvers, yes, and they will need to express these abilities through writing. So a stronger focus on writing across all grade levels is where Haldane needs improvement.
Thank you. Margaret Parr. This was a question that was submitted by the public, and it was chosen at random out of the 23 questions that were submitted. So here it is. As a board member, do you think you can be both an advocate for the district as well as the community?
The answer is, of course. I don't see how these two things can actually be separated. The community revolves around this school. You can tell because there's people in this community who have, their kids have long graduated, but they still go to football games. They still go to the plays. They still show up for the STEM night where everybody has their engineering projects and their science projects. People grow up in Cold Spring, they go out into the real world, and then they come back to Cold Spring to raise their children. Advocating for the school is advocating for this community. Every time something good happens in this school, the accolades of a Blue Ribbon School, being named to the top 100 schools in New York State. This year, we had the class of 2017 at Haldane had the 8th highest SAT scores in New York State, north of Westchester. All of those things make all of our property values go up. It's all intertwined. So trying to separate advocating for the school and advocating for the community does a disservice to both of them.
I do. I mean, I do think that, I understand that there's a partner, I said this before, that there's a partnership that has to be developed between the three entities that create the school district, basically. And one is the community, the second is the administration, and the third is the trustees. And I understand that. From what I understand, the trustees take an oath. And they take an oath to defend the United States Constitution and then not to support the United States Constitution and support the New York State Constitution. And that means they have a duty to the people that they represent. So yes, I think they can do both. Because not only do they have the duty to the people to guard against their individual liberties, but they're also making sure that those kids are going to get educated. And they're going to get educated as best as they can. And you do so, and you say this oath, and at the end of this oath you say so that you're going to do so to the best of your abilities. Every oath I've ever taken, especially the one I took 30 years ago, I have done to the best of my ability. So yeah, I do believe that. And that's about all I have to say about that.
Great. So do I think I can be an advocate for the district and the community? I think the answer has to be yes, because I think that's part of the job description. The community is the district. The community are the people who are going to vote whoever it is in, the community, the people who are paying the taxes to have the kids go here. So you have to be able to be an advocate for both the community and the school. The responsibility of the Board of Ed is to oversee the education and the school district, but it relies on people who don't necessarily have kids in the district and don't have kids who are going here anymore. And they're an important voice. You think about all of us, myself certainly, who have kids in the district and we're concerned about the day-to-day operations and what they're learning. There are also people here who are contributing to our kids' success who don't have children here anymore. And we need to be able to be mindful of that and represent that voice. I think that's part of the balance and the dynamic that we need to be able to recognize and listen to. And as for reasons why I think I'll at least marginally okay at doing that. I think the three. One is I think I'm approachable. I think most people have an easy time coming up and talking to me. If that's not true, let me know and I'll change something. Second, I'm a generally curious person. I like having conversations and figuring out things that I don't know. And on that note, I am very self-aware that there's a ton of stuff I just don't know, or more euphemistically, I'm a lifelong learner. So I'm really aware that, especially in a district like Haldane, there's a ton of stuff going on. There is no way that anyone can keep his or her finger on top of everything, and I'm committed to getting an understanding of as much as that's going on as possible and engaging with all parts of the community so they know and we can represent them all. Thank you.
Well, I too give a resounding yes to this question. Whether you are a parent of a current Haldane student, a Haldane graduate, or never had any children at all, we all know that the youth are the future stewards of this country and this world. Nurturing their talents, encouraging their curiosity, introducing them to new ideas, and giving them the tools and the skills to realize their dreams is in the interests of all of us. That being said, the board must be thoughtful in its decision-making on how to spend taxpayers' dollars. I too am a taxpayer and a community member after all. As a board member, I would be prudent with the taxpayers' money, making sure the expenses are both a good investment and not beyond our means. I would communicate this with the community in a manner that is understandable and accessible to all. Thanks.
So my answer is that all I can say is that I can try to do my best. I think the role of a board member is to be an advocate and a good steward for the district. With that being said, there are decisions that are made that are, again, being recommended by the educators and the administrators for the good of the school. They may be in conflict with the community. And we have to be ready for that. And, ultimately, the decisions that need to be made for the children and for the education for Haldane. So I will put my best foot forward. But again, I just want to be honest and say that there are going to be consistent challenges. I believe we see it every year. Budgets come out and they become contentious discussions. But again, I think as a board member, we are required to just really make the best decision for the district.
Thank you. You survived the question portion of this event. So now you will each take turns. You have 2 minutes to maybe fill in some gaps, just a closing statement. And due to our beautiful anonymous drawing before, we're going to hear you again.
Great.
All right.
So I don't want to take the full time because I don't really have that much to say except thank you for listening to all of us, whether we make sense or not. But again, as I said before, my son is not in Haldane, but he will be, and I think it's a very important time for myself to get involved. With that being said, I do understand that as Margaret had mentioned, that the facilities component has been recognized. There's been reports that have been done. Now is the real big challenge. The challenge is how does one implement that? And how do you implement it in a smart manner where it's fiscally responsible and that we make the right decisions so that we're actually not utilizing and doing things that are a mistake. You make a wrong turn with regard to decisions with facilities, and you will pay for those sins at a later date. The other also challenge is that there is still an open position for the facilities director. I can bring a great knowledge base for that as well to kind of help assist in that search. And the other component as well is, when you're talking about kind of that long scale or the long-term vision of, ultimately what happens with the facilities and the school and the long-term planning, again, difficult decisions are being made, and they need to be made so that they're actually fully understood with the same, kind of rigorous kind of involvement and research and comparing all of those components and approaching that with the same academic plan.
I just want to conclude with it's been a pleasure to serve the last 3 years on the Haldane School Board. When we sat up here last time, I was here with 6 people instead of 5. Joe Curto sat exactly where he's sitting now and announced, he looked at us and told us that whoever won would be in for the ride of a lifetime. He was right. There's days that have been very difficult. There have been days that I kind of looked around and said, what are we doing? Do I really want to even know these things? What have I gotten myself into? Am I really making a difference? Some of you know, some of you don't. But over the last few weeks, we suffered a very personal, significant loss in our immediate family. I seriously considered pulling myself out of the race, but decided to stay strong and not do that. The community has been so supportive of me and my children through the 30 years that we have been here. I knew that it was the right thing to stay strong and hold on and really hope that you'll give me the opportunity to give back to this community for another 3 years. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mark.
One of the things that we didn't talk about here at all was that the second priority, and I would say probably very close to the first, is that the kids have to have a safe environment to learn. And part of that is that we hired a new SPO for next year, and that's really, really good. But I think the board sometimes might need an influence on security, and so that someone would know who could liaison perhaps with the sheriff's department and kind of bring to the table a little bit of knowledge in that area. I also think that one of the things we have to do too is that we need to consider how these kids are actually being educated when it comes down to I don't know where my thought went right there. Anyway, I'm good. Thank you.
Fantastic. Well, thank everybody for coming. I appreciate it. Good for you to be informed constituents. I think as a community, you're really fortunate to have a choice. You got 5 people up here, variety of different backgrounds. Everybody's bringing something different to the table. Everybody's got a different style. It's a great opportunity to make a choice about what Board of Education candidates you think are appropriate for now, for this point in time for Haldane District. So I don't envy you your decision. I think I've got a couple things that would be useful in terms of my background. You've heard a bunch about that. I don't need to repeat that. But I will say something my wife would probably not recommend that I say, but I'll say it anyways. I'll be very clear. I'm not running to win. I'm running to serve. So if I don't win, I'm still going to serve. I'm going to do something. And I think that's the most important thing. So I encourage you all to continue to participate, and thank you.
Well, first I want to thank the volunteers at the Haldane PTA for hosting this event and giving the community the opportunity to learn what each of us would like to bring to the district if elected. I also want to thank all those who encouraged me to run. I'm running for school board because I am passionate about Haldane, and I want to build a nurturing environment where education inspires, motivates, and challenges kids to be critical thinkers, problem solvers, and doers. I love these kids. They have such exuberance to learn and enthusiasm to share their knowledge. I've seen this so many times firsthand. When the kindergartners experience the complete food cycle by growing, harvesting, cooking, then eating, and come away loving pea shoots and asking to eat more. When the 3rd graders are learning about flower reproduction and get to dissect a flower in the garden and are amazed when they find the actual parts that they saw on a worksheet. The high schoolers, budding adults with so much passion to express themselves through music, drama, and art. And the young athletes feeling the exhilaration of knowing that they are on the top of their game and that they have the confidence that they can do anything. And the deep thinkers who challenge themselves to go beyond expectations, to make their mark on the world. I want to be part of a board that actively promotes and encourages kids to reach beyond standards. And I think Haldane is headed in the right direction. Because that's the point, right? These kids are our future. It doesn't matter whether you have kids or you don't. We want them to be the best prepared, the most thoughtful, caring, civic-minded, and successful individuals ready to confront any of the challenges that may come their way. And it's our job as educators, as parents, older adults in the community, to invest in their future, to teach the next generation what we know, acknowledge what we don't know, and encourage them to be lifelong learners, the ones that are graduating next month and the ones that will be graduating in 2030. To nurture them and support them on their journey into adulthood, the future stewards of our world.
Thank you. Thank you, Sandy. I think we've come to the end. I don't know if we all clap, but I think it's worthwhile. So this is my first rodeo, but I will take a second to not only thank all of you for coming, for being active participants in our community, not just today, but every day. And I want to thank all of you for coming and making yourself available to share your thoughts and ideas and your plans with us. And also, just the idea of stepping up to this position. Really, really thank you. So, are you saying anything? Should we keep the applause going for Laura Hammond? I also wanted to say thank you to Cheryl, who's been here since 5:30 this morning. Everybody always forgets about all the people that take to put this together. Laura, would you like to say anything?
Sure. Just want to thank you all for coming.
Hold on.
Sorry, I should know this by now, right, Cecilia? Thank you all for coming. Laura Hammond, currently serving as board president. Thank you all for informing us about how you're going to plan on serving. It's a really important job. It's not an easy job, and following up on what Joe said many years ago, it is the ride of your lifetime. You get lots of different opportunities, some not so good, some fantastic, but truly it's a great job. So, thank you.
Thank you all for attending this evening's event. I invite all of you to come vote on May 15th from 7 a.m. to 9 p.m. right here at the middle school. You can park in the Bell lot and enter, and somebody will direct you to the room. Thank you so much.